this is quite a fall from grace. This is, one of the most senior police officers in the country, the chief of the second biggest police force in the UK, and he's had to retire and go early because of his handling and his leadership over a scandal that has been in the headlines for the past couple of months. That in itself is sort of punishment enough, I think.
But let me talk now to Danny Shaw. Now, Danny Shaw is an expert. He's been watching police activity for many years and home affairs activity. Danny, what do you make of this movement now, this development? Craig Guilford, who has been subjected to an awful lot of pressure, is it inevitable that he has had to go?
Yes, it was inevitable, Carolyn. From the moment that the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, stood up in the House of Commons on Wednesday and declared that she had no confidence in Craig Guilford, and then summarised the findings of a review that she had set up by the policing watchdog, the Inspectorate of Constabulary, which she said the findings were damning into the handling of the Maccabi Tel Aviv Aston Villa match. From that moment onwards, it was inevitable that he had to go. The question was, when would he sort of just walk quickly, fall on his sword, or would there be a bit of a tussle? Would he try and tough it out? It does appear that in the past sort of 48 hours, he's tried to resist moves to go. I am told, he's an obstinate man. He's a man who's, not being used to being pushed around. He's proud of his record in policing. He's had a distinguished career over 30 years. He's got the QPM, the Queen's Policing Medal, which is the highest accolade in policing. And so clearly he felt, perhaps he had a right to stay on and try and see this crisis out. But I think it was soon apparent that there was dwindling confidence in him. I think other police chiefs and other people in policing were all saying it was inevitable. You've got to go, Craig. And he has decided to do so and retire.
Danny, I should introduce myself, actually, because obviously we joined that press conference just as Aisha was finishing her programme. I am Carolyn Quinn, and I'm sitting in for Kathy Newman just for today. She will be back next Friday and every Friday. But Danny, just back to that conference with the West Midlands Police Commissioner. Interesting that he has been talking about Craig Guilford and the fact that he has retired. Now, some people will say that retirement is a much more graceful way out for him than being sacked, and that will not necessarily satisfy his critics, will it?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that if the Police and Crime Commissioner wanted to dismiss him, he would have had to go through quite a lengthy process that would have involved probably inevitably legal costs, would have stretched for weeks, if not months, and that would have been expensive. And at the same time, Craig Guilford's in the situation whereby he actually retired from policing, and then he came back on a contract with West Midlands Police. So he's already retired once and he's entitled to his full police pension. So in a sense, I don't really see the point, and I can completely understand why Simon Foster has sort of taken the decision to accept his retirement. That is what usually happens in these cases, where the Police and Crime Commissioner decides that a chief constable has to go. It usually ends in them retiring or resigning. It's very unusual for a chief constable to be directly dismissed from their post by the Police and Crime Commissioner. I can only think of one or two occasions where that's happened. And incidentally, this is the first time in over 2 decades that a chief constable has departed because they have lost the confidence of the Home Secretary. The last time that happened was in 2005, when Humberside's Chief Constable David Westwood was pressurised to go by David Blunkett, who was then the Home Secretary, after the Bishard report into the Soham murders and all the failings in Humberside Police. Westwood tried to resist. Blunkett took it to the High Court, and eventually Westwood had to cave in and he went. And so this is quite a moment, actually. It's unusual for the Home Secretary to, in effect, force the resignation or retirement of a chief constable, but it's happened today.
Yep, the Home Secretary lost confidence in him. Downing Street lost confidence in him. And yet here we have the Police and Crime Commissioner, Simon Foster, saying that it's important to acknowledge Guilford's many positive achievements and contributions during his 3-year tenure as the Chief of West Midlands Police. Simon Foster going on to say, now we must rebuild trust and confidence. Do you think that that's possible?
Yes, I think it is possible. I mean, the one thing Craig Guilford did do was he brought West Midlands out of what's called special measures. It was in the sort of most serious stage of monitoring by the policing watchdog because of its performance and some concerns around that. And he brought it out of that, which is to his credit. And so, this episode apart, and one or two other blemishes during his tenure, it's not in a disastrous position. This is not a police force that is failing and has got a series of scandals and issues with it. This has clearly highlighted some problems. So I think it is possible for a good chief constable with a good leadership team around them to restore confidence in the force. But I think it's important that this is done now. This is done and dusted in terms of this chief constable and this episode. It didn't drag on for weeks and months. That would have been to the detriment of policing overall.
Yes, the Inspectorate of Constabulary interim report earlier this week was damning, wasn't it? And so now there will have to be constructive moves towards showing that something like this cannot happen again, that you will not see another case of this confirmation bias, as it was called, with officers not looking at all the information about the Maccabi fans in an objective way, effectively ignoring information that contradicted their original thoughts. Do you think that there is a way now of reassuring the public and those in the West Midlands that something like this can't happen again?
Well, I think some moves have already been made in that regard. There's talk that the sort of links and the engagement with the Jewish community in the West Midlands has improved just in the last month or so as a result of this debacle. So that's a positive. And it is about the statements that the new chief constable makes and putting those into practice. You have to listen to what your community is saying. It's very important as police officers and the Police and Crime Commissioner to listen to your community, to take account of their concerns. But you have to police without fear or favour, and you cannot be beholden to one community group. And I think the suspicion was that West Midlands Police was influenced too much by some community representatives within the Muslim communities of the West Midlands. And as a result of that, they took the decision to ban away fans from Maccabi Tel Aviv coming to the game at Aston Villa last November. That's a pretty unprecedented move. I'm a follower of football. I've been watching football for 50 years, pretty much. And it's a massively radical step to ban away fans from a fixture, unless there's, some really good intelligence. And I remember when that story broke and I thought, well, the intelligence has got to be pretty alarming for them to take that step. And as it turned out, I don't think the intelligence did justify that ban. And a review of the decision making, I think, supported that and said you could have allowed Maccabi fans, a smaller number, to have come and just policed it. Once you go down the road of banning football fans, it makes policing difficult and it makes community trust and confidence even more difficult as well.
Danny, just a very quick question. This means presumably that he has his pension, as he would have done, despite being at the centre of this storm.
Yep, he keeps his police pension. As I said, he retired once from policing. You can do that if you're a police officer after 30 years, so he will have a very healthy police pension. What we don't know is whether there's some separate severance payment that's been made for him retiring or going early before the end of his contract. I don't know those details, but there won't be any moves to chop his pension off. I mean, that's just it just can't really happen under the legislation. No. I don't think that would be justified. This is quite a fall from grace This is, one of the most senior police officers in the country, the chief of the second biggest police force in the UK, and he's had to retire and go early because of his handling and his leadership over a scandal that has been in the headlines for the past couple of months. That in itself is sort of punishment enough, I think.
Danny, thank you very much. The view there from a former Home Office advisor. Interestingly, we've already had plenty of comments coming in from you. Let me read just one that has come in to us here on Times Radio. You can WhatsApp as well, 0333 003 2353, or send us a text on 87222, starting your message with the word Times. Greg has done exactly that. He says the retiring chief constable behaved disgracefully and lied, including to Parliament. The speech about his departure was a childish whitewash that fools nobody. Frank says it was a disgraceful statement from West Midlands Police with zero learning. Please hold the lack of integrity and truthfulness to account. The worst police scandal I have witnessed. Plenty of you also coming in with similar positions on that. So do keep your views coming.